thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn more about text criticism in Accordance Bible software. I do want to reinforce what Linda just said, and that is that we ask you to keep your mic muted unless you're actually asking a question. Even a little bit of background noise that you may not notice. We have 2 or 3 microphones on, and what happens is that background noise begins to pile up, and it gets very difficult for other attendees to hear. Today's session, as I mentioned, is on text criticism in the Greek New Testament, and here are the kinds of things we're going to take a look at today. We'll cover basic vocabulary, since some of you may well be text critical experts, and others of you may just simply be interested in what a text critic does. We'll start with, again, the vocabulary. We'll also take a look at some of the Greek New Testament texts and apparatuses that are available in Accordance. And we'll talk about what I think of as graded text critical resources. When you start, what's the proper kind of resource to use to sort of warm up to this discipline, and then as we stretch down through what is the ultimate in Greek textual criticism. We'll also take a look at some of our Greek New Testament textual apparatuses and a comparison of eclectic Greek New Testaments, as well as some of our interlinear resources and how those are used in Greek New Testament criticism. We have some podcast resources, and I've also compiled here at the end an introductory bibliography for Greek New Testament. So without further ado, let's take a look at a slide I was making up just before I started today, and that is the info pane here. You may or may not be aware of the fact that you can show your apparatus in the info pane independent of any Bible that you have over here on the left-hand column. And Accordance will automatically display the apparatus if there is something to be said here in the first verse or the passage that you're actually working with. Let's take a look at some of the texts that are available and some of the differences behind those texts, and then we'll take a look at the apparatus. I'm going to go ahead and skip over here to Accordance. I'm going to get rid of this info pane for just a moment, and I'm going to add a different sort of parallel under text. I have mine organized this way, and what I want here is the GNT tagged. We have 2 identical Greek New Testaments. Let me put this one on the left. Let me try that again and put it on the left. Oh, that's right. The resource that I'm using here, this Pinpoint app, has a tendency sometimes to interfere with easy drag and dropping and other sorts of common accordance tasks. And if that continues to happen, I'll turn it off momentarily. We actually have 2 different kinds of Greek New Testaments available that have identical text in them. The GNT, and you can see here in parentheses tagged, is the same exact text as the one issued by the German Bible Society, which is the NA28 Greek New Testament. The only difference between the text on the left and the text on the right is that the text on the right has siglia. That is, little marks that indicate the apparatus. It also comes with the apparatus. This text on the left we offer to our users, particularly those who are not interested in text criticism or those who are simply at perhaps a lower level of Greek learning. That way, they're not equipped to use the textual apparatus, and besides that, they're not interested in this point. Now, by siglia, I mean the little things that look like this right here. If you can see that angle marker there, there's another angle marker down here, and that's not the only kind of marker, but that just happens to be the one that appears here in Matthew. You can see that when I move my cursor over that marker, then the textual information appears down in the instant details. I'm going to press my Shift key in order to lock instant details, and you can see down here all of this information. In this particular case, it happens to be a spelling difference. Should the name be spelled like this, with an epsilon and a final sigma, or should the name be spelled like this, which is completely different? And here, of course, is the textual support all of the manuscripts, including, that's the symbol for the textus receptus right there, or the majority text. And then this marker indicates the other spelling. There's still a third spelling, and it is supported by these. And finally, the spelling in our own text right there. See, that argument is separated again by that dotted line, and the manuscripts that support it. So if we put our cursor over this, we can see this in Instant Details, and we can also launch Instant Details by having the Option key down and just clicking on that so that we can see it like that. So either of those is available. Notice, and remember we're right here, you can see on the left the cross highlighting. Notice that there is no angle before Boas. And that's because that text has no marks. By the way, we suggest that the text on the left be used for searching and for things like statistical analysis, since from time to time we have found that these little apparatus markers can be counted as words. We're working to eliminate that, but just to note if you want to do some statistical analysis on the Greek New Testament. All right, having said that, and shown you the difference between those two texts, let's go ahead and go back here and we'll take a look at some basic vocabulary. All right, here we go. Manuscript is often abbreviated MSS, and all that it is an extant ancient text in the original language. Some of these were written on vellum, which is leather. Some were written on papyrus. Some of them were written on even more exotic materials. In the case of the Old Testament and the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have a section of text that was written on copper, known as the Copper Scroll. Nevertheless, many of these texts are incomplete and some are fragmentary. So here on the third slide, notice this piece of papyrus right here. That is actually a section of a Greek text, in this case part of the New Testament. So when we say fragmentary, some of these are really, I mean, they could be thumbnail size and still be usable. So one of the first things that you have to do if you're a real text critic is to learn to assemble things that make even the most difficult puzzle look like a walk in the park. A textual variant is one of several different ancient readings for the same text in Scripture. They can be as simple as the one that I just showed you from Matthew, and that is a different spelling of a proper name, or as complex, or as, let's say, significant as part of a chapter being dropped out. You may have seen the recent news articles, probably 2 weeks ago or something like that, where a flood of posts hit Facebook claiming that the new NIV had taken verses out of Scripture. Well, the real question is, did those verses belong in Scripture to begin with? And as it turns out, the NIV did not have those in the main text and hasn't since 1984. But that's one of the kind of textual variants that text critics deal with. An eclectic text is very different from a manuscript. An eclectic text is an artificial text, and a modern artificial text. What it does is it seeks to take the best reading of every textual variant and to put them together in a single manuscript. So the NA28, the Nestle Aland 28, is the most modern reconstruction of what we think that the original text for the New Testament looked like. Eclectic texts come with apparatuses, and those for the editorial decisions in eclectic texts. In other words, in an eclectic text, not only do the editors assemble what they believe to be the best readings and put them nicely together for us in the main page, but at the bottom of the page, it contains an apparatus that says why they made those decisions. Notice, those of you who also work in the Hebrew Bible, that this is very different from working in the standard Hebrew Bible, the Stuttgart Tensia. In fact, the Hebrew Bible is only a single manuscript. It happens to be a reproduction of the Leningrad Codex. And the apparatuses down at the bottom often suggest better readings than the ones that are found in the text itself. We are still in the process of reconstructing an eclectic text for the Hebrew Bible. That project has been going on since I entered the field many years ago, but it looks like it's finally seeing the light of day. Well, a text commentary is a fuller explanation of the decisions made by those editors. And a facsimile is an ancient reproduction, or an exact reproduction of an ancient manuscript. These days, it's not so much a fax as it is often a photo and sometimes a digital photo. Now, here are the resources currently available in accordance for textual criticism. And even as I put these together, I realized that this is incomplete at this point because we actually added some manuscripts in the last month. Nevertheless, these are the manuscripts that we have available over here in the far left column. And you'll notice that we have images of those manuscripts available in some cases. So we have images of Alexandrinus and Sinaiticus and Washingtoniensis and so on. And we hope to get one here for Beze fairly soon. In addition to these individual manuscripts, we also have several different kinds of eclectic texts. The standard for the field is the NA28 with siglia, or you can see these module names have changed. And this is the most recent reconstruction of eclectic texts. We have others. We have Tischendorf, we have Westcott and Hort, we have, of course, the text for NA27, which is found in these three text modules. And we expect soon to be coming out with the United Bible Society 5, which is also based on NA28. So you can see it's coming. And finally, just for fun, for those of you who hold to the Q theory from the German Quelle, or source, we actually have an eclectic text that is a reconstruction of Q. Here are the apparatuses available, and just read them across. Tischendorf has an apparatus. The apparatus for these texts, or I should actually say this text, is found in two forms, NA27 and UBS4. And the apparatus for these two texts is found here, and we'll be releasing this one soon. And then we have the mother of all Greek New Testament apparatuses, and that is this wonderful thing from the Center for New Testament Textual Studies. As far as text commentaries, Metzger and Comfort are the two that we have currently. I understand there's a new edition of Comfort out that we do not yet have, and we have the USB translators handbooks. All right, well, that's an awful lot of stuff. So let's take a moment and see if we can gather our thoughts. And let's see some of these in accordance. Now, I'm going to pause for just a minute and open up my Citrix control panel. I'll take a minute and look and see if there are any hands up, and open the chat box and see if there are any questions. And I'll pause periodically through my webinar. So if you do have questions or comments, this is a great time to make them. No? All right, we'll plow on here. Let me get rid of this unmarked text here. And let me go ahead and open up the info pane from over here. And we'll go to something that has a bit more of interest, text critical wise, and that is the very first verse of Romans. And we'll go to Romans 1:1. And remember, in the info pane, none of this material shows up, particularly the apparatuses, unless there is an issue with the very first verse at the top of the pane, the verse that shows up here. Now remember, we can change the focus of the info pane simply by moving our cursor over a verse reference, pressing the Command key, and clicking. Now notice the focus of the info pane is now Romans 1:6, or I'll move it down to Romans 1:8 and click again, and it's Romans 1:8. But for our purpose, we'll go ahead and return to the first verse. We can do that just by scrolling, just like that, and that resets that info pane. So here's the question before us. And now that I'm thinking maybe a bit more clearly, let me go ahead and open the ESV with Strong's. For those of you whose Greek may be a little scant, or maybe it's been a while since you studied. All right, here we have Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus, called an apostle, and set apart to the gospel of God. All right, so the question before us is this. These two words right here, Christou and Jesu, the question is, in what order should they occur? Now that's what this little mark here means. And take a look down at the bottom. The ones that say they should be reversed are here. And the ones that say what the text is, and that is that the title comes first, Messiah or Christos, are listed here. Now, if I don't want to dedicate space to instant details, remember I can click with my option key here and get the same information. And remember, we can always copy that information just by clicking here. Let me do that. Let me go ahead and I'll, oh, why not? Oh, here's Word. I've got a copy of Word that's already open. Oh, let's try this again. We will do this, then we'll click the correct button, which is this one right here. That always works if you click the correct button. And now we'll go ahead and paste it in right here. So if any of you are writing dissertations, or let's say you've got a really astute congregation that you're lecturing to, and you want to put all the textual variants up there, that's how to do it. It's probably easier, and I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to open instant details. It's probably easier, rather than opening up all of these different textual resources here, to simply run our cursor over them. There's the NA28 apparatus. Here's the revised CNTS apparatus, and if you haven't used that before, don't worry about all that. I'm just showing you how easy it is to access. Here's the NA27 apparatus. There's USB 4, and here's Tischendorf. Now, when I was learning how to exegete, one of the first things that I was taught was make sure that the text is solid. In other words, resolve any textual issues before you start exegeting the paragraph. And that still remains a really, really good suggestion. The nice thing about accordance with its info panes is that we can tell automatically whether or not there's a textual variant simply by going to the text and checking to see if any of the apparatuses appear. Now, for this to work, for the info pane to work properly, the apparatuses have to be located inside the apparatus folder. So if you have renamed this folder, and that includes even putting a space on it or trying to make a plural for it or something like that, it will not appear in the info pane over here. The same thing is true with the apparatuses. If they are any other place than here in the apparatus folder, they won't appear here. But if you have done this, then you can be assured that as you're going through text, if you see a text that does not have an info pane apparatus appearing in it, then you know there's no text variant. You can proceed immediately to exegesis. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of various exegetical apparatuses? Well, I'm trying to think, should I show them first or should I explain them first? Well, let's look at them first, okay? Let's go back to accordance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dismiss the info pane, and now once we go back to Romans chapter 1, we'll go ahead and open a whole bunch of apparatuses. Under reference tools, we'll go to apparatus, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Nestle Allen 28. And we'll just, I better close the library because I'm going to run out of space here very, very soon. All right, more apparatuses. NA28, let's, we'll open NA27, why not? We'll open USB 4. We'll open Tischendorf, which I must say very few people use anymore that aren't actually in the field of text criticism, and not the least because it's in Latin. And I'll go ahead and open the CNTS. And what I'm going to do, and what I'm going to suggest to you, is that when you do the CNTS apparatus, it is best opened in a column, in a horizontal space. It needs all of that space in your workspace to really thrive. All right, so let's take a look at it. Now remember, we're just working on Romans 1. And I'm going to arrange these apparatuses from what I think of as simplest, which would be the USB 4, to most complex. All right. Normally, the place where students start with textual criticism in the Greek New Testament is with the United Bible Society's text. It's a little easier to read, the font in that text, but the other thing is that the apparatus is much, much easier to use. A couple of reasons. First of all, there are fewer textual variants mentioned in the USB apparatus. The NA27 and 28 will list many more. That's the first thing. The second thing is that where a textual variant is mentioned, USB is much more complete in its references. So compare, let's say, this reference to this one over here. Notice all of these church fathers that appear here, in addition to the normal texts that are quoted over here, or the ones that are quoted over here. There's much more complete listing of references and manuscripts in the USB 4. So fewer variants, but more information for every variant. What's even more interesting is that every textual variant contains a grade. Now, if you take a look at my instant details at the bottom, let me just sort of adjust that, like so. Do you notice how it says the letter B indicates that the text is almost certain? The editors of these eclectic texts have gone through and graded how certain they are in each of these cases. Greatest certainty is indicated with an A, B is a little less certain, C is, we're pretty good, and D, we think this is right, but we don't have any idea. This is a great way to learn text criticism because then we can see how the evidence firms up for these various textual sources. The great thing about any of these is that as we cursor over them, we don't have to know what P10 is or what B is, because as we move our cursors over them, we can find out more information about each of them. I remember sitting with a USB text in my Greek classroom, sticking my thumbs and fingers in this and moving back and forth from text to the list of manuscripts in the back. Well, if you don't know who this guy is, notice that each of these include dates and fuller references. So if you forget what a manuscript is or you've never seen it in your life, then you can actually cursor over these and find out this information. Another thing that makes the UBS text easier to use is the fact that the text itself appears, what the editors consider the correct text, appears first, not last, as appears over here in NA27 and NA28. I see we have a question. Can you use an apparatus for one Greek Bible, say USB 4, if you're reading a different Greek Bible? Yes, you can. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what we're doing here, Lawrence. The only thing is, these little siglia won't match. They're keyed to a particular kind of apparatus. But again, Another advantage of accordance is that we can mix and match these apparatuses. So what about NA27? I don't generally talk as much about NA27 since it's now been superseded by NA28. There are some differences between the two texts and some differences between the two apparatuses, but by and large, NA28 is to be preferred. And you can see that it's much more complete. If all you've got is NA27 and you don't want to invest the money for NA28, I understand. I try and keep up to date in these kinds of things. So I'm going to go ahead and just dismiss NA28. Now, NA28 has many more textual variants. I'm going to scroll here. I'm going to untie the scrolling on USB 4. I'm going to scroll down. Notice that the next one we really have any information on is verse 7 here. And then we go to verse 13. And then we go to verse 15. Notice that's a little different from NA28, where we have verse 1, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9. So what I'm trying to show you is the fact that there are indeed fewer variants mentioned here. Whoops, Romans 1. Why did NA28 skip to, let me try this again. I have no idea why NA27 just, or NA28 just jumped to the end of Romans. One more time. Romans 1. Who knows? We obviously need to report that as a bug. I'm going to untie scrolling. Go ahead and jump this up to, well, I know what. Here, let's do this. Retie scrolling. I have an idea. I'm wondering if it needs to be tied to that first verse. It's just very strange. I think I just uncovered a bug in the middle of a webinar, everybody, which is always a little embarrassing. But so let's go ahead and sorry, I just got a comment here. Jessica says, hey, it's working in my accordance. Thank you, Jessica. I can't tell you how encouraging that is. I get rid of Tischendorf here. I'm going to get rid of NA28. I'm going to add it back in. Where's NA28 apparatus? And it comes in at the same place. Who knows? Oh, there we are. Now we're back to where we want to be. All right, so by contrast, NA28 has these nice little siglia. Yeah, that's really nice. It does list all the major manuscripts, but it lists the variant first, or the alternate reading, and then after this upright line here, then lists the text. But you'll notice very few references. Now, let's take a look at my favorite, because everything has been a warm-up for what is about to occur. I absolutely love the CNTS manuscript because it mentions, because it mentions every single variation. Here, for example, is a list of all the variations on the title Romans. This is just the title. Now remember, none of these list anything about the title. All right, take a look. All right, here's one that says to the Romans. That's great. Here's one that says it omits it. Okay, here's one that says, oh, Paul the Apostle and the Epistle to the Romans. And then we have all sorts of variations. And you can see all of those variations there. Now, when it comes to the actual text itself, The actual text is arranged in columns. First of all, you have the verse, then you have the number of the variant, then 0 is always used for the base text. In other words, the text that is found here in NA 28. And these are the manuscripts that support this text. Notice that as I move my cursor over them, CNTS offers a lot more information about each of these manuscripts than any of the other apparatus does. It gives the abbreviation, it gives the Allen category, it tells you where it's located, and it tells you roughly what texts it covers in the New Testament. And once again, no more thumbing through pages in order to find these out. Now, the other thing is this. These variations are organized by how the degree to which they differ from the base reading. So let's walk through this. Here we have Paul, a servant, and then right here, this is the abbreviation for Christu, and this is the one for Jesu. So what we have is a sacred name here, and the abbreviation is indicated by this line over these two. So what CNTS is telling us is that in P10, this fragmentary manuscript, which is found in Harvard, which is only of Romans, actually has abbreviated these names, and it appears to have dropped out the atus in Cletus.
Dr. Shea, there's a question.
Oh, I missed it. All right.
Do all of the Greek Bibles in accordance agree on the base text?
Now that's a tricky question. All of the ones based on NA 28 agree on the Greek text. So the current tagged Greek New Testament does, NA 28 does, and when UBS 5 is released, yes, they're all the same base text. Now, it's slightly different from NA 27. And NA 27 is, again, slightly different from the other two eclectic texts we offer, Westcott and Hort and Tischendorf. However, all of them vary from the individual manuscripts in the Greek New Testament, which we also offer. Now, I just realized that I communicated a whole bunch of stuff here. Let me do it this way. Let's go ahead and do a new workspace. And we'll go ahead and use NA 28 as the base, like so. And since we were in Romans, let's go to Romans 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the interlinear on here. Okay. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up. I actually have already set it up to show the various Greek manuscripts. Now, I don't know why I use the NIV here, but let me go ahead and let me just run through these, okay? And we'll just use the name Paul. In this case, the text that I've used as a base at the top is an eclectic text, but the following manuscripts are all individual manuscripts. So there's Alexandrinus. You'll notice that it uses all caps. This text doesn't have Romans. This Byzantine text has Paul, and notice it uses large and small letters. Sinaiticus only uses large. Tischendorf, which is an eclectic text, uses small. Vaticanus is all caps, and Washingtoniensis doesn't have this. Now, if we actually go through these, take a look at Christu. Notice that it's abbreviated in Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, but written out in Tischendorf. Jesu, same thing, abbreviated in Alexandrinus, Sinaiticus, and Vaticanus. And apparently Christ is missing in Alexandrinus. So we can actually use accordance to compare these various manuscripts. Now, I wish I could say that we could also use it to compare the papyri. However, something weird happens when we use the papyri with this. See if I can add papyri. I can't be. I'm going to remove Washingtoniensis, and I'm going to add papyri. Okay, now I've added the papyri. The problem with adding the papyri is that Concordance only displays the first example in the papyri, which in this case doesn't have Romans 1. So you actually have to open this papyri in order to see all of the variants. So we can do that. And notice we have let's see if we can find anything in Romans 1. So here are the various papyri, and that's not a good example because it's all from the same manuscript. I wish I'd thought of this ahead of time. I could have come up with other manuscript for you. All right, so the answer is that the manuscripts all vary from each other. The eclectic versions that we have all vary from each other, but they vary much, much less because as we become more expert in the science of text criticism, more and more the text critics have come to an agreement about how the text should be read in a particular place. So I know that I've gone a long way around to answer your question, Lawrence, and covered some other things in between. Was that satisfactory, or are there others of you that want to chime in and maybe could explain it better? Lawrence says that was a great answer. Thank you. It was the best I had at the time. Let's just put it that way. All right, so let's go back to this example. The point is that CNTS will give us every variant, no matter how slight, including something as simple as the misspelling of names. Or another one that is very, very common is the substitution of a different spelling in a word. So, for example, take a look at these three words. Notice that this one varies by having a diphthong right here. And this one varies because it has an eta here as opposed to the iota, which is here. So if you want every textual variant ever identified, this is the great place. By the way, one of these days I'm going to do a podcast just on CNTS, and we're going to talk about how to search it, because it can be searched by manuscript variant. It can be searched. It can be searched by variant. It can be searched by classification of variant. It can be searched by manuscript, or it can be searched by Greek content. So lots and lots of different ways to use it. What if your needs are not so great? All right. What if you don't need anything like CNTS? What if you're very happy with USB4 or Nestle Allen 28? What about some explanations for these things? Jessica just asked a question. In the first variant for Romans 1:1, it looks like the CNTS apparatus is missing some listed. It's possible, Jessica. Let me see. But my guess is, and I'm going to move that down again. But my guess is, notice how, verse 1. Sorry, let's go to verse 1. There's verse 1. Let me just open this wide up like so. Notice that this is just the first variant of verse 1. Here's the second variant of verse 1 and the third variant of verse 1, the fifth, and so on. So my guess is that the variant was in one of these variants that I didn't show you the first time. I would say that if you noticed a manuscript that is missing, then certainly do CNTS the courtesy of reporting it to them, because I'm sure it's an oversight. This is their revised edition. They did find some places where they had left some manuscripts out, but my understanding is this one is complete. Ah, yes, she found it. Great. All right, let's dismiss the CNTS variant, and let's add a couple of text commentaries. In this case, I'll go to my commentaries, and what I'm interested in here, under New Testament commentaries, you'll notice I have these right at the top of my commentary section. I'm going to add comfort, commentaries. The reason that I have these at the top is that these aren't classified as apparatuses. They're classified as commentaries, but they are always the first things that I want to see when I'm looking at a commentary. All right, now both of these are keyed to the USB, but both of these offer more explanation. The simplest one, and the one that I recommend to pastors, is this Comfort Text Commentary. This one happens to be based on NA27. I understand that they have just released one that has been updated to NA28, but I haven't seen it yet, and I know that we don't have it in accordance yet. N stands for Nestle Allen, and U stands for UBS. And what Comfort is telling us is that here is the reading, and it's agreed on by this manuscript. And nicely enough, he gives us the English translation and gives us the major manuscripts that support that translation. He also, and here's where it is so valuable for pastors, he also lists all of the modern translations that support this reading. The variant, which Textus Receptus and Westcott Hort agree on, says no, Jesus should be before Christ. Here's the translation of it. Here are the manuscripts that support it, and here are the modern day translations that support it. Now, if you're in any kind of a teaching position or preaching position, let me encourage you to know not just what your own Bible says, but what other people's Bibles say in your particular group, so that you can address it if you do happen to have an issue like this. Now, here is Comfort's explanation, which I find very, very readable, and it tends to be very practical. Metzger's is nowhere near as helpful. On the other hand, Metzger himself is much more competent. So in general, if you can follow Metzger's logic, then you're going to find more information here about the Greek text, whereas Comfort's probably going to do a better job explaining it, and he certainly is going to give you all of these modern translations. So I consider Comfort a must-have for pastors and Bible teachers, and that's one of the reasons why I have it appear in my info pane. And as a matter of fact, if I can add my info pane to this, you'll probably notice that Comfort comes up really quickly. There we go. There's a Comfort text category. I put the NA cross references before it, as well as some whole Bible commentaries. But there's Comfort and there's Metzger, so I can always check to see if we're dealing with an important textual variant. Now, those are the resources available. Let's go back to the keynote for just a minute. So here's how I rate these. Whether you do text criticism or not, I'd suggest adding Comfort to your accordance library. Here's the list price. I don't know what it's on sale for, but this is just an excellent resource. Remember, we're going to be dealing with New Testament only, but that is, after all, where most of the important textual variants for Christians exist. After Comfort, the UBS-4 is an excellent standard student apparatus. And you can, if you've already got the GNTT, then you can add it for $39.90 or something like that, and it will give you access to the most important variants, and it will give you the most information on those important variants. Metzger is above Comfort, so when it comes to a really technical variation, He's going to give you a lot more information if you have the Greek to follow it. NA27 is the standard scholarly apparatus. And if you want something that is like the ultimate, consider CNTS. It has, well, let me tell you that it would have saved me an awful lot of trips to the library when I was doing my work on Revelation. The fact is there were variants that were important in my dissertation, minor enough not to be mentioned in NA 28 or 27 at that time. But fortunately, I was able to go to the University of Minnesota, and just a shout out to Jessica there. I was able to go to the University of Minnesota, and I had access to a facsimile, so I could actually check a particular variant for the Greek New Testament. Here are some images of some of the things that we have done today. And these images are all available in your Citrix control panel under materials for this class. I included this because I know that we move kind of fast in a webinar, and I thought you might like a single page where you could sit down and sort of sort through all of the variants for a particular passage. The same thing is true here. Here are the eclectic Greek New Testaments that are offered, and in this case what I did is I put them side by side. Here's NA 28, here's NA 27, here's GNT the Tischendorf, and here's Westcott and Hort. And what I did was I turned on compare text. Notice that in Matthew verse 2 through 6, there's no difference here. But there is a difference in spelling in the Tischendorf manuscript here, and here, and here. And I don't have any idea what the difference is. Oh yes, look at this. Ferris has the accent mark over the alpha, or over here in Tischendorf and also in Westcott and Hort, it has it over the epsilon. So accordance can pick up these text differences. If you're interested in text differences, let's go ahead and we'll open, let me just pick, let me pick Tischendorf here because that'll be the biggest difference. If you're interested in text differences between the texts, if you put them in parallel columns and click compare like this, it will automatically highlight them. You can also go under display and set and hit list text differences. And Accordance will open up a zone here that will list all of the differences between the text. Somebody just said thanks for the screenshots. Okay, so back to the keynote here. One more, and here is an example of how to set up an interlinear so it shows all of the variants. Now, I wish, well, first of all, I wish that I knew more about text criticism myself. But more than that, I wish I could convey to you some of the some solid information about how to do text criticism. Unfortunately, that's just not possible in a webinar of this length. What I have done is I've assembled an introductory bibliography for you. And again, this is in the materials for the course. This list actually comes from the Evangelical Textual Criticism blog spot. And this is the top 10 essential works in New Testament text criticism. And if you will click on this particular link, or actually copy it and paste it into your browser, you'll find that they have additional lists, and very often they'll have comments about the worth of each one of these. Still, these books are a great place to start to learn more about text criticism. If you're interested in learning more about text criticism and how it relates to accordance, or you just want to go over it again, there are two older podcasts. You can tell, 29.1 and 29.2. I think this is when I was actually producing these podcasts in a spare bedroom with a sheet behind me. They're that old. but you're welcome to tie into those. However, a much better choice would be to click on this link right here, https iTunes Apple Institution. Watch this. Let me just go to the page here. It's coming. Give it a minute. This is actually the Center for New Testament Manuscripts, and there are some great, great podcasts here on New Testament text criticism. So Dan Wallace has just done outstanding work, and he gives us some wonderful insights into text criticism. And I believe, oh yeah, here we go. I'm going to click on this one. Here we go. The basics of New Testament textual criticism would be a great place to start. What is text criticism? And then you'll notice here that there are 15 different podcasts. They range in time from about 4 or 5 minutes all the way to about 10 minutes. So highly recommend